Showing on Law Weekly today, we discuss issues of increased funding for the judiciary. Our guest is the senior advocate of Nigeria, Candide Johnson. We also have the views of some lawyers on some of the challenges facing the judiciary and what can be improved on in this new legal year. Plus our weekly recap of the top trending stories from the courtrooms. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Shola Sheyeli. Let's go straight away to our conversation. Candide Johnson was called to the Nigerian bar in July 1984. He obtained his LLM degree from the University of London in 1985. He was conferred with the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria in September 2003. He's held several positions and was at one time a member of the Legal Practitioners Privileges Committee and the Disciplinary Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association. I began the interview by asking him to give us an update of what has been happening with the Justice Reform Project, which was set up by him and some other senior legal practitioners in the aftermath of the issues which removed the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoge.
Justice reform is a long-term project, and it's a project not for a small group of people, but for all the stakeholders in the justice system. The small group that you now describe as a justice reform project was one that was catalyzed by events which were surprising in the legal field in Nigeria. And since then, we've recognized that there is a need across the board to generate a better understanding of how the justice system works, how it ought to work, and how it can be and must be made accountable to members of the public who are the principal users. So we recognize that because our public exposure on this incident created certain expectations, we had to build structures, we had to build alliances, we had to build out a network and a system for generating ideas for justice reform. So we organized ourselves into committees dealing with various aspects of the framework for justice. We created specialized committees, and we have created a legal structure which will be announced shortly with chairman and managers, etc. And we are in the middle of an outreach to various sectors, people who are interested, the media, students, academia, business, and international community, many people who have invested and continue to invest in legal innovation and development in Nigeria. We realize that there's a whole amount of work that has been done that has not been organized into one digestible form. So many of the questions that we pose as to how we can improve the justice system in Nigeria have been discussed, analyzed, and been subject of research projects by a number of people. There are a number of organizations we weren't even aware of, international and local, who are working on justice reform. And we think that the fact that we have got a leading group of operators of the system thinking and trying to project and advocate these advances, that working out these alliances and getting people who will support us and who we will support is very important. So we've put together, we continue to speak on public issues. We've engaged the EFCC on its manner of operation and the building of criminal prosecutions. We've engaged business, we've engaged Judiciary on a number of issues which we think are germane, and we continue to do so. And very shortly, I think in the next 2-3 weeks, we will start to announce the plans for another forum in Lagos to present some things we have done and to display some of the engagements and the product of those engagements.
So while we look forward to this forum in Lagos, can you give us an idea of some of the feedback that you got on some of the challenges that are really affecting the judiciary now?
You know, there's a deep cultural disinclination of Nigerians to the justice system. It's a colonial importation, and I think that people didn't understand the whole spirit and philosophy of it. That's one thing we've understood. For example, there's a groundbreaking study that was organized by a Netherlands-based international institute which talked about justice sector delivery and the appreciation of the results of justice sector. And it was a huge revelation to see how the ordinary people view the accessibility and the deliverability to them of the product of the justice system. The level of confidence in the justice system is very poor, and people don't even understand it. Some people think that even those who operate it don't understand how it works. So this is something that we've understood. You have to make a system which is indigenous, which is organic from our own understanding and our own beliefs, which in many respects I think mirrors our traditional systems of justice, because we understand how to do justice between ourselves. But somehow we think that when you go into the High Court, it's a system that you just have to go and game. We have to explain it to ourselves afresh. We have to create a system of justice in Nigeria which is rational, which is accessible, which is simple and which the people can identify with instinctively. And I think that's part of what the challenges we face. We're finding that people understand that the system doesn't work for them. Then they know that if a system is made which they can understand and which works for them, that confidence in it will increase and its effectiveness across the board will be established. So this it's a big emotional, psychological, and cultural undertaking.
I want to move on to another issue, the financial independence of the judiciary. It's something that the Chief Justice of Nigeria has been talking about a lot recently. At the 2019 Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association, he made heavy weather of the need for financial independence of the judiciary. At the swearing-in ceremony for the new silks commencement of the legal year, the new legal year, the CJN went on about the same issue.
I think that the independence of the judiciary is tied up with the level of financial resources that are available to them. That is clear. I think that if you make judges dependent entirely on the whims of self-interested executive officers, then you may imperil their independence and you may make them weak. That is clear. But it is fundamental to the government and to most democratic governments that the purse strings for any government activity are controlled by the legislature. In organized systems, the heads of courts have a well-known system of budgeting, open, transparent, accountable, by which they explain the judicial needs for the coming year. These are things that can be audited. These are things for which they're ultimately accountable. If a judiciary requires 100 million to operate in a year, and the state values the work of the judiciary, then they ought to have the 100 million if it can be justified. So the task of judges is partly political, partly financial, but above all, it's about accountability. So they need to have an open and transparent budget process. They need to be able to explain to every member of the public what the money is being spent on. Then they need to enlist political support to be sure that the money is given to them. And then finally, they need to be held to account for the way that money is applied. It's not sufficient to make sentimental appeals for the promotion of personal interest. For example, I've seen the video that's the current Chief Justice asking for increasing funding for the judiciary. In particular, he spoke about retired officers and providing medical treatment locally and abroad. There's nothing wrong with aspiring for the increase of your income. The first thing I should say is that if you have a high quality of judges delivering a high quality justice system, you have to recognize that to achieve that, you have to attract the highest possible skills, the highest possible quality of personnel, and that you have to pay the cost. I remember many years ago when they asked a chief executive of Hong Kong, at the time when the Chinese were taking over from the English, how they would guarantee the independence and the quality of the judiciary. And his answer was simple. The Hong Kong judiciary is the highest paid judiciary in the world. That's fair enough. This requirement for personal financial improvement is often confused with financial autonomy for the judiciary. Every branch of government must appropriate money through the process of the Constitution, which requires that you go to the National Assembly and you justify your budget. So the judiciary has a responsibility to set out the proper accounting principles on which it budgets, explain what the money is needed for, and be able to account for the expenditure of money that has been taken. This is fundamental. This is not inconsistent with independence. Now, you cannot take public money without operating and applying it responsibly. So I don't think that is in contest, that if the judiciary sets out a logical and rational budget, it is entitled to have the money required to deliver a high-quality justice system. They're not going there because they want to feed off the carcass of the public resources. They're going there because they want to deliver a public service. Public service is a sacrifice. So you can't say because you don't give me the spoils, I'm not going to do the work, because it means you may not have been committed to the work in the first place. So let's not confuse the two things. You must pay for the cost of an effective judicial system. You must recognize that to attract competitive personnel who have the highest quality, you must pay them competitive salaries. And then you must determine, then they must tell us, how much do judges make today? What more do they want? And how is this comparative to bank managing directors? If you're a high court judge, why do you think you should earn the same as a bank managing director? I'm not so sure that the public purse justifies it, and I'm not so sure that it's an excuse for not performing optimally with the funds that you have right now.
So in your opinion, do our judges earn enough?
That's not a question that can be answered in isolation. I think some judges earn too much. I think some judges earn too little, because I have a varied view as to the competence and output of judges across the field. But I think that if you take, for example, judges in Lagos State, for example, my understanding is that their income is comparable to that of an executive in a bank. They have a free house. They have cars that change once or every 2 years. They have research allowance. They have research assistance paid for. They have salaries which are competitive to those of other professionals of the same age in legal profession. Assume you're a judge and you're made a judge after 10 years. How many lawyers practicing in Lagos at 10 years post-court do you think make $3 million naira a year? Not a month, not many. So why do you think that if you're making $1 million naira a month in private practice, you should go to the bench and make 3? In many other countries, people consider that you'll be sacrificing because public service is a noble thing and that you're willing to sacrifice to serve the public. So it's not about spoils, it's about service.
You also talked about accounting, self-accounting. Do you think that the judiciary are properly accounting for the funds that they already get?
You know, again, I want to separate two things. The personal emoluments of an individual judge are for him to account for himself. Across the board, you may increase the salaries of judges, you may increase the allowances to make them more comfortable. They shouldn't be financially embarrassed. But the bigger question for the public is how money appropriated for judicial services across the board, especially the administration of courts, is applied and operated by the heads of courts. Now, I think this is an area that is particularly opaque, and I think it's an area in which a huge responsibility to account should be placed on incumbent heads of courts. The way the money is spent across various judiciaries differs. Some judiciaries spend money on cars, and some people spend money on foreign travel, and some people spend on filing systems and technology. The purpose for appropriating judicial budget is to improve the administration of justice. If the public cannot see the value for money, then the justification for financial autonomy or increasing the allocation to judiciary is not made out.
So are you saying that there's no justification for more funding for the judiciary?
I'm saying I can't say that for sure. I'm saying that if you appropriate money from the public purse for a purpose, the way to justify repeating that allocation or increasing that allocation is showing how the allocation first made has been spent. You have to prove value for money. I don't think that the system of judicial budgeting and the way it is defended in the public is sufficiently coherent or sufficiently credible to say without more that a greater allocation or greater autonomy is required.
Away from the judges, I want us to end with something for the lawyers. I want them to be able to take something away from this interview. As we go into this new legal year, what do you consider to be the most critical skills for the 21st century lawyer and law firms?
I think they have to learn that there will be increasingly smaller resources available to them and that collaborations are important. I think that they have to realize that because of the integration of technologies in what has been called persistently the fourth industrial revolution, that technology and its application is going to reduce costs and going to reduce the necessity for human participants in legal services. I think it was McKinsey who revealed in a study recently that in the next 10 years, that 60% by value of legal services in the world will be provided by machines. I was telling judges recently that the European Court of the University of London designed an artificial intelligence program which was asked to consider cases before the European Court of Justice. In 84% of cases, the computer gave the same decisions as the European Court of Justice. So maybe we need less judges. If you continue to systemize and streamline and apply technology to the practice of law, human actors are going to become less relevant. So lawyers ought to think how to dust up their hobbies, and those who are practicing in law firms, for example, need to realize that if they don't access the facilities that technology provides, they will very quickly become dinosaurs. You know, if you see behind me, I have hundreds of books. All the capacity of these books and more is on my laptop computer. So these books are largely decorative right now. You have to invest. And since not everybody has the capacity to invest, you have to collaborate. Identify what is your particular skill and build that with the skills of others who are close to you. Share the cost of resources. And you have to realize that you're going to have to work with a variety of people in a variety of places. You have to make sure that you can integrate your services. Otherwise, very few lawyers will survive in 10 years' time.